Here I'm starting off by cutting the 3/4 inch maple plywood, and I'm starting by cutting the top first, then I will cut the bottom, the sides, and the back panel. Now is the perfect time for me to run the edge banding on the front face and the sides. I like to do this pre-hand, before I put it together, because once I put it together, it's going to be a lot harder. And it's the same routine. I use an edge file to cut the excess off at a 5-degree angle. Then I'll sand it. Then I'll reheat it with the iron on the edges to make sure I have a good bond. I'm going to drive some pins to hold it in place while I pre-drill and screw. Now the screws I'm using is 1.25 inch screws. This is the bottom. It's only going to be sitting 3 inches off the ground, so I decided to go with the screws. If it was sitting a little higher, I would have used dominoes. Now for the back panel, I'm going to drive pocket hole screws on the sides, but on the bottom I'll drive the 1.25 inch screws. For the top, I'm going to run a brace on the front and the back. I'm going to screw the back piece and drive my pocket hole screws on the top. And that's what I'm going to be using to secure my top to. I'll drive screws from underneath. When putting the dividers in place, I just grab a piece of scrap wood. This is cut at 17 inches long, and I'll be putting it on the top, the bottom, and the back. And what I'll do is I'll clamp it in place, I'll push that panel up to that board, and then I'll drive my screws in place. It's a lot easier to do it this way than it is to mark a line and try to hold it on that line while I drive the screws in place. This is more accurate and faster. Then I'll just drive my screws from the bottom. I'm using the French cleat system to secure this to the wall. So I'm just going to drive some pins to hold it in place, and then drive 1.25 inch screws. Here you're seeing me just drill the screws on the top, but I will be putting some in the middle. And that cut is at a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to test fit to make sure everything fits okay, which it seems to work perfect. Now for the top, I want it to look a little bit thicker. So what I did was I cut a 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch piece of plywood. I will glue and pin this to the bottom of that top, and that will be on the front and the 2 sides. I'm not putting anything in the back because you won't see it. And this just gives you the illusion that the top is 1.5 inches thick. And once you edge band, you won't notice. You would actually think it's 1.5 inches thick. And I'm just using a clamp there to hold it in place. Just an extra set of hands. Then I'll use my router with a flush trim bit to clean up the edges. Then I'll give it a light sand after that and edge band that top. There's a shelf going on each side and one in the middle. So I'm using my Kreg jig to drill in my holes for my pins. Now there's not a whole lot of room here, so there's only going to get 3 holes per side for adjustment. And before I edge band the shelves, I'm just going to test fit to make sure that everything is good. That way, if I have to trim a little bit, I can do that without any issues. Now for that center shelf, I'm going to use some 3/4 inch stock maple by 1.5 inches wide, and I will glue and pin that in place. That way it matches the 1.5 inches on the top. Then I will fill in the holes with some walnut putty or a wood fill. Now I did make this just a slight longer. I can always trim it after. I edge band the top, and now I'm ready to drop it in place. And that fits pretty good. Ready for the doors. The doors, I'm using 3/4 inch stock maple. And what I'm doing here is I have the blade set at 1/4 inch in height. I'm going to run all the pieces through. I will slide my fence over, slide the pieces through again, and I'll keep doing that until I get the proper fit for that panel. The panel I'm using is 3/16 of an inch thick. For the joinery, I'm going to be using my domino machine, and I will be running dominoes. 1 domino per corner is plenty. Now for the panel, I never glue the panel in place, only the dominoes. The panel, you need a little bit of room for the humidity in your house. So it needs that little bit of give. So when gluing any kind of doors, it's mostly the tenons is what I glue in place. And of course around the tenon as well. Once I got everything glued up, it's ready for clamping. Now those holes on the sides there, I will fill that once everything is dried. So I'm just using the clamps on the sides to hold it at the position I need it at. And then I'm just using those long clamps to clamp everything in place. Again, I'm not putting a lot of torque on it. You don't need a lot of torque on it. As long as you have a nice, good, snug fit. And then the next day I will sand the panel down, fill in the holes. Now it's ready for drilling out the hinges. Again, I'm using my Craig jig. This is a lifesaver. It's quick, it's fast, and there's no guesswork. Now I'm ready to mount the doors in place. I like to have everything all in place, adjusted, ready to go before I do any stain up. That way, if there's any major adjustments or if I got to cut something, now is the perfect time before I stain. Now normally for 2 doors I just mark it out and drill out for my handles, but this time I figured I'll pull out the jig. It's been a while since I used it, so I pulled it out just for these 2 handles. Everything is looking good, ready for stain. Now I apologize for I lost the footage of the staining process. This is a walnut in color. My battery died on the camera, so I didn't get it. Here I'm applying a coat of sand and sealer, followed by 3 coats of clear. And this is sprayed within 15 minutes apart. Now when I moved my camera, and I apologize for this, when I moved my camera, I guess I might have moved my settings on there, so the frame rate is not the greatest here. Here I'm just setting up all my shelving, putting everything back together, ready for the customer to pick up. And the last of it is the handles. And she is complete. And this is ready to go home. Customer's picking it up this evening or tomorrow evening. So this is good to go. That pretty much wraps it up for this video. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.